Today, we're digging into the very mysterious death of James Forrestal, who was America's first ever Secretary of Defense. Now, the official story says it was a tragic suicide, but what if it was something else, something far more sinister? We're going to be exploring the arguments laid out in David Martin's book, The Assassination of James Forrestal. Right off the bat, the book opens with this really chilling quote. It immediately makes you question everything. The idea is that in the high-stakes world of Washington power, suicide might just be a convenient label for something else entirely. It really sets the tone for a deep dive into this historical mystery. So let's get into it. The book's central argument is basically a complete deconstruction of that official story. It really challenges everything we thought we knew about this huge moment in American history.
To really get the weight of this story, you have to understand who James Forrestal was. I mean, this wasn't just some random official. He was the very first U.S. Secretary of Defense, right at the center of America's strategy after World War II. We're talking about one of the most powerful men on the planet at the time.
For decades, over 70 years in fact, this has been the official story you'll read in the history books, that Forrestal, just broken by the immense pressure of his job, tragically took his own life. A sad story, but a simple one. Or, so we've been told.
But what if that simple story isn't the whole story? The author, David Martin, definitely doesn't think so. And his journey to this pretty explosive conclusion actually started in a very unexpected place.
So years later, Martin, who you might also know as DCDave from his investigative work, was looking into the death of another big Washington figure, Vincent Foster. And he kept hearing the same name come up over and over, Forrestal. The media was constantly comparing the two deaths. For Martin, though, that wasn't just a parallel. It was a huge red flag. It made him wonder what really happened to James Forrestal.
And that is the question at the absolute heart of this book. What if the official story is a fabrication? What if the truth has been buried for decades, just waiting for someone to come along and dig it all up?
Now, look, if you're going to allege murder, you need a motive, a really good one. And the motive that Martin lays out is a total bombshell. It takes us right to the heart of a geopolitical conflict that, frankly, still shapes our world today.
According to the book, it all boils down to this: Forrestal's fierce opposition to the creation of the State of Israel. Now, Martin argues this wasn't about prejudice. It was about cold, hard strategy. Forrestal was apparently terrified that if the U.S. took sides, it would jeopardize access to vital Middle Eastern oil and drag America into a conflict with no end in sight.
And this quote from Forrestal's own diary really says it all, doesn't it? For him, this wasn't some abstract policy debate happening thousands of miles away. He genuinely believed the future of the United States was hanging in the balance.
And taking this stance, Martin argues, made him some very, very powerful enemies. He was hit with this relentless smear campaign, led by these muckraking columnists like Drew Pearson and Walter Winchell. They planted all these stories, these myths, painting him as paranoid, unstable. They were trying to completely destroy his reputation.
Okay, so we have a motive, but what about the actual evidence? Well, this is where the story gets really dark, because when you start to look closely at the details from the night Forrestal died, the official story, it just starts to crumble.
Martin's book really reads like a forensic investigation. It goes back and uncovers this whole trail of clues that were either missed or, more disturbingly, just completely ignored by the official inquiry.
Okay, just look at what the book presents. There's broken glass on his bed. Why? That suggests a struggle. His bathrobe cord was tied tightly around his neck. And get this, the window he supposedly jumped from, it wasn't even in his own room, which had security screens. No, it was this tiny, awkward window in a kitchen down the hall. Does any of that sound like a straightforward suicide?
And then you have this, the so-called suicide note. It wasn't even a note. It was a poem somebody had copied down. But just look at the handwriting. Martin makes a really compelling case that it is a flat-out forgery. It just doesn't look anything like Forrestal's actual writing. According to the book, this is pretty close to a smoking gun.
But maybe the single most explosive part of Martin's entire investigation is a secret document, a government report that was buried for over 50 years. What was in it? And more importantly, why was the government so desperate to keep it hidden from the public?
55 years. Just let that sink in. That is how long the government kept the official report on Forrestal's death, the Wilcutt's report, completely under wraps. It actually took a Freedom of Information Act request from Martin himself to finally drag it into the light in 2004.
I mean, if that's not a giant red flag, I don't know what is.
But here's the kicker. When Martin finally gets his hands on the report, it's been gutted. The official autopsy report? Gone. The photographs of the body? Missing. All of the absolutely crucial evidence that could have told us what really happened that night, it had all just vanished. The book makes the point that this isn't just sloppy paperwork. This looks like a cover-up.
So, you've got a powerful motive, a highly suspicious crime scene, and what looks for all the world like a massive cover-up. Where does all that leave us? Well, David Martin's book does not pull any punches. It comes to a conclusion that is as shocking as it is disturbing.
And there it is. The book's final verdict is just chillingly clear. James Forrestal was murdered. He was silenced, Martin argues, because he was standing in the way of a powerful political agenda. The book even calls his death one of the earliest plots of the post-war deep state.
So, what do we do with all this? David Martin's book raises some really unsettling questions, and not just about the death of one man, but about how history itself gets written. It just makes you wonder, how many other official stories out there are hiding a much darker truth? And how many more secrets are still buried, just waiting for someone to find them?